Well, hey, book lovers, welcome back to our weekly live stream cover design broadcast. We are creating a cover on air today for book lovers, for authors and publishers to grab while we're on air. And we are creating a fantasy book cover today. You voted on Instagram stories. You voted last time we had a cover design. You voted on some of the live streams as well. And we're going to design together on air. So today's is featuring a fantasy landscape. We're going to have mountains. We're going to have beautiful lighting. We've got a person of color model that we're going to be working with. I'm very excited for this one. So let's dive in and let's actually go ahead and there we go, pull it up on air. So here we go. I'm going to explain what we're doing, but thanks so much, Sydney, for joining. Danielle, thanks for being here. Start thinking up potential titles for this as we start to create this. Now, I did cut the model out already because I wanted to make sure I was ready to go, and I did start to kind of piece some of these things together so that we're ready to go. But if you need to know how to cut out models, they're in all the other broadcasts. Go ahead and check that out. First thing I'm actually going to be doing is adding in this hill in the front. This is actually, and let me show you what I did. This is a single image that I cut out the hill for, and then I duplicated that. So you can kind of see there's this harsh line in here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is grab my brush tool. I'm going to use a soft round brush on black, and I'm just going to come in here and erase that hard line with my mask there, and all of a sudden it starts to blend in. Now there will be words over it, there will be the ISBN over it, all those things. So it doesn't have to be super perfect, but you can see how it starts to blend in there. As it is, I'm going to make this a little smaller so that I can see when comments come in. There we go, better. So we've got the girl walking on the grass. We do have the author name there. I may turn that off for now just so we can kind of see it. And you can kind of see how she's like kind of standing on this. So because I've already cut her out, she should be more or less ready to go. I am going to come in, and the first thing I want to do is make sure I blend her into the setting. So you can kind of see how we've got that nice clean line there. I used the quick selection tool, and then I used a black brush, hard around black brush on the layer mask to go ahead and erase that. But the next thing I want to do is actually blend her in, because right now she's like stepping over top. She's like hovering over the grass. So I have other sections of grass that I've added in. We're going to have to color correct it, and we're going to have to put it up over her foot. Right now, this layer is under her foot. I'm just resizing it so that I can work with that a little bit better. I'm actually going to do a couple of different things with this. So first things first, I'm going to drag both of these layers up over my model. So all of a sudden it kind of starts to blend in a little bit there. And I'm just going to adjust where that is so that it kind of clearly goes over her foot just a little bit so that it blends in a little bit more. I just kind of want to fill that in there. There we go. That kind of blends it in. So obviously we've got a huge color discrepancy here. So we are now about to change that. I am going to duplicate these layers, and I'm just going to turn those off because I'm actually going to use this grass in a second location on here in just a minute. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to put these two sections of grass into a folder, and I'm going to label it grass so that I don't lose it. And I am going to grab my color picker tool. Looks like a little eyedrop. And I'm just going to go over until I found a color on the grass behind it that I like. I'm then going to add a blank layer, so it's a transparent layer. And with that color that I just selected, I'm going to use my paint tool, and I'm just going to paint right over that. Now, obviously you can see that is very, very like, ooh, in your face. The next step is to take this and right click and make sure I'm using a clipping mask. So that only affects the layer beneath it. So now you can see it only colorizes where we are using it. And I just realized as I'm doing this, I am designing this without telling you what we're working with today. So we are working with Photoshop CC. I'm using a Home Intuos Pro editing tablet, and I am going to put on my blue light blocking glasses so that I don't burn my eyes out as I'm doing this, which is my priority here. I don't want to give myself even more of a headache than I already have after my little accident today. I am going to change the blend mode of the coloring I just put on there. So right now it's normal. I can go to dissolve, darken, multiply, burn. You can see how that's like really dark. Lighten, there's screen. There's all sorts of different colors, and sometimes you just have to kind of go through it to see what blends the best. Overlay might be a good option, and I can just back the opacity off, but I am just going to kind of go through here and see what maybe would work a little bit better. sometimes it would surprise you what options you have in the blend modes. So I'm actually probably going to go with, I'm probably going to go with overlay. And then I'm going to back the opacity off a little bit. And then because I need to blend this a little bit, I actually may duplicate this set. I may make this a little bit smaller. So you can kind of see how, like, if you look at the grass in the background, it has dark patches and lighter patches. So I would actually take my blend mode and change that to something a little bit darker maybe. And sometimes you just have to play with it to see what's going to work. The other one I was looking at was Vivid Light. There we go. So now it's starting to blend in a little bit more. So I may actually just grab some of those groups of patching here and just kind of fill it in so that it starts to blend a little bit more as we're doing this. And I could potentially just kind of like move some of this around in different locations. And then when you're done with that, you can still see that there's some lines here. So we definitely need to switch this up a little bit. So I'm going to take all my grass, all the grass that I just created, and put it in one. Oops, no, I'm not. I'm going to put it in one singular file, in one folder, and I'm going to label it grass at feet, just so I know what it is and where it is. And I am going to then put a layer mask over it. And then on a soft round brush, 100% opacity black, I'm tapping off around the hard lines. You can see how it's already starting to blend in. Check that out. And we're blending, and we're blending. Here we go. And I may even need to add a little bit. Oh, I grabbed the layer. There we go. I may need to put a contrast and brightness panel on there as well. I'm going to pull that up. I'm going to create my clipping mask to link it just to those grass layers. And I'm going to bump up my contrast, and I may even bump down, oh yeah, I like that better, the brightness, so then it starts to blend in. So you can see how clearly that's starting to blend in a little bit more. So let me go ahead and pull back now that we've gotten her feet on the ground there. And let's take a look at how we're doing with this. This is blending in nicely. I do like how this is going. I like that. So I was just checking, make sure everything is good. And right now I want you to start thinking of titles. I know that we've got some great people watching right now. Say hi. Let me know where you're joining me from. I know I'm doing a lot of talking and explaining, but I want to hear from you guys too. So if you've got questions on the fantasy genre or whatever, I'm happy to get those answered for you today. The next thing I'm going to do is actually add in my background. So this is a really stunning mountain scene. This is just like the moody skies. We've got the mountains behind us. We do want to do some separation between the cliff that she's on and that background ground in that little valley area. So we're going to get to that. We can either go darker or we can go lighter to create that separation. And Amanda, you're loving it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We are going to be separating this a little bit, and I want to know, should we add dragons? Should we add magic? Should we add really good lighting? I need to know what we're doing next, but this is a fantasy-inspired look. And I think my next step is actually potentially, I'm going to try something because I have an idea. It might flop, it might not, but I do want to change some of the lighting because I really love those light clouds right on the spine, and I want to bring at least some of that over to my cover. So I see we got a lot of questions or comments coming in. And I want to make sure we chat. Sydney from Alaska. Dang, that's awesome, Sydney. Danielle, Freedom Matthews in the house. I love it. We're going to go ahead and we are going to grab our lasso tool. And I am just very roughly, just lassoing some of that lighter cloud space. And then I'm going to right click and click on copy layer. So now I have, well, dang, y'all, that like right there, that just matched, it blended. I'm gonna leave it just like that. I'm gonna put a white layer mask over it. White layer masks and black layer masks allow you to add things in or take things away without being destructive. It does not damage the layer you're on. So it's not like you're erasing something, you're just masking it off. So I now have a soft round brush on black, 100% opacity, and I am just starting to get rid of the pieces I don't want. And again, maybe this works and maybe this doesn't work. We're going to find out. but I'm just starting to like blend in the clouds. Now, obviously up high, that's going to be really stark with the contrast, but I don't want to get rid of all of it. I need to blend it in nicely. So I'm actually going to reduce the opacity of my brush down to around 25%. And I'm just going to start tapping into the clouds. So you can kind of see how it's starting to blend in a little bit, right? Because I still really like those strong purpley colored clouds, but I wanted that pop of light, and I really do like how that's turning out. I do see that it went a little bit over my mountain down in the bottom left corner, and I don't want that, so I'm actually removing that. But let me just turn this on and off for you so you can see the difference, so you can see that pop. Look at that. Look at how that blended in. And it reshaped the mountains. And it added that touch of light on the mountains as well, which I really, really like. Now, I am seeing some stuff on the mountains I may want to clean up just a little bit, but I see the comments coming in, so I definitely want to check those out. Danielle says, you should for sure add some dragons far off in the back. That is what I was thinking. Sydney, you should put a dragon coming in and out of the clouds. Just an idea. Okay. When I started to create this fantasy cover before we went on air today, when I was pulling my pieces, my mind immediately went to, oh my gosh, there should be a dragon there. And now that you guys are here confirming that, I feel like gotta do this. Freedom says, this feels like a weather changing vibe, like elemental almost. Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm going to zoom in so that we can look a little bit closer, because I do want to take a look at my mountains. I want to make sure that my lines all make sense. There's nothing like weird and random, like, you know, random houses or other things in the background here. I'm just going to grab my spot heal tool. I'm going to rasterize my layer. And anywhere I see something that I don't necessarily like so much, usually and typically I'm going to be speaking of those light areas, just a little standing out strangely. Like it matches with the clip that I put her on, which I like. I just didn't like all of those areas. So I am just checking, making sure we're removing any paths that I don't want in the grass, making sure we can see a harsh line up here. So I'm actually going to come back in here. I'm going to move over to my cloud layer, and with that black brush on, we're still on 25% opacity. I'm just tapping it off of where I see the harsh line. Okay, just double checking on that. Let me know. I think I'm going to keep her dress the same color because I think I like that, but let me know. Do you think we should change her dress to another color? I'm just kind of moving some of that cloud-like layer off of some of, but not all of, the mountains in the back, because I do kind of like that it has that foggy look to it. But I wanted to make sure it included everything that it needed to. And the cool thing about Photoshop is that if you don't like something and you're on that layer mask, you can just hit Command Z and it undoes it for you. It's an amazing feature. I love Photoshop. All right, let's zoom back out. Let's take a look at our full picture here. The next thing I'm going to do, I want to be working on my light, and I want to make sure I'm getting in space for my title and for my author name. So let me add my author name back in. There's a very good chance this font will change. I don't know. We'll find out. We could potentially put this up here. I don't know. I kind of really like the work I did on our foot. So this may actually end up here. But hit me with some title ideas for this as we continue to work on this and we work in our lighting. All right, so I'm looking for what I want to do with my lighting. And I think the first thing I'm going to try, because I want to make sure I separate my cliff from my background. So the first thing I'm going to try is to add in just a blank layer above the mountains, but below the cliff layer in my panel. And I'm going to grab my gradient tool, and I'm going to make sure it's color over transparent, and then I'm going to make sure it's on radial. And I am going to grab like a black color. The first thing I'm going to try is separating it by adding in darkness. If it doesn't separate it the way I want, then I'll do the opposite and separate it with some light. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to very strongly darken this up a little bit. You can see it's like clearly black. We're going to reduce the opacity in a minute. But I almost feel like I may want to separate it with light. I'm going to turn that layer off for a second. I'm just going to switch from black to white. And this is not what I'm going to be using for this. I just want to see if this separates it a little bit better for me before I actually invest some time in doing that. So let me just, oh. Y'all, did we just go fog? We might have just gone fog. Hang on, let me try this. Instead of doing it as big as I had before, we're just gonna have little puffs of like foggy looking things here. We're gonna reduce the opacity on that in just a minute. But for now, we're just gonna kind of pull this in and blend it just a little bit. So it's too much, Ugh, maybe it was better the first time. Yeah, that looked a little bit better. But then, just to make sure we really truly have that separation, what I'm going to do, actually going beneath this layer, I'm going to grab my selection tool, and I'm going to grab my water bottle because I need that. I'm going to grab my selection tool, and I am just going to lasso a part of the base of the mountains and around the grass. I'm going to make it a little bigger. There we go, so that I can actually grab what I need to grab. And I am just going to keep kind of away from that foggy area. Oh dear. Sorry, guys. Now that I've lassoed that area, I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab a brightness and contrast panel. And I'm going to pull my brightness down and my contrast up. And we've got that harsh line. We don't like the harsh line. So we come in. Oh, sorry, guys. The water hit the back of my throat and I'm like struggling not to choke. With my soft round brush white, 100% opacity, I'm just going to start painting in a little bit of that darkness and remove that dark line that we had there. But I don't like it quite as high as it is, so I'm going to come in and take it off of the mountain so that we can see things. But I really kind of liked it in the valley there. There we go. Okay. So we've got this separation now. Now we can see where the foreground is, where the background is, and we are good to move on, given that I will stop choking momentarily. So once we've got that, then we can start to play with the rest of this. And before I get into the lights too much, and before I add in the dragon, I want to deal with the title and the author name placement. So get in my comments, because we need to come up with a title for this. And while you're coming up with a title, I'm actually going to go in my files because I didn't have my dragons ready because I didn't know if we were doing it or not. So I'm just going to find my dragons, and you're going to start to come up with some title ideas. And I'm just finding those overlays so that I am good to go with that. And they are just registering. I know you guys can't see them, but I do have some dragons here, and I'm just looking through them. We're going to do some color changing. We may do some other things as well. Ooh, the War Knight. Oh, I like that, Sydney. That's a good one. The War Knight. Okay. I might run with that. That's the first one I saw. If y'all are still putting in titles, that's awesome, but I think I might run with this because it's here. It's here, and we're running with it. So we know when we create titles, we always put every word on a different layer so that we can move it around and we can adjust it. So I am going to go ahead and click the oh man, we might actually keep this font. Sometimes I'm like, I got to find all the fonts, guys, but this might actually work because it is fantasy. We did a fantasy thing last time, fantasy-ish. And we're just going to fill that in. We also have the ability to change like the kerneling, and some fonts allow you to like do fancy things with them, which we may or may not do. And now we are going to make things bigger and adjust things to different sizes. And we're just going to move things around and see how we like them where they are being placed. And I may have to change where my author name is. Oops, what do I want? There we go. May have to change where the author name is to accommodate the title. Possibly. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll find out. But I'm just going to start to like move things around, see where I like them, see where I don't like them. You don't like this like this. Yeah, maybe I don't love that placement. So then I'm just going to try again. I'm going to see where things fit in, where I like to have things so that it makes sense. with the title. So we could be putting things up higher. We could be putting things up lower. We could be rearranging. Could potentially be putting it over top of our model in some places. Maybe I want the word night to be bigger than the word war. Let's find out. Sometimes you just have to play with the fonts and with the text and with the effects on the fonts to see what is going to make the most sense for this. And sometimes I like to do like interesting placements for things. And I just like to try things. So it could potentially be a little bit of work, of trying, trial and error, as it were. And so I'm just kind of like moving things around where I could potentially want them. And we'll see how we like it. Sometimes it rocks. Sometimes we just have to keep changing things. That could work. That could work for now. Let me just leave that there for a moment. And I'm just, yeah, gonna put the author name back down at the bottom. I wonder if I do have to, like, if you see the frame around here, you actually have to keep the text inside of that frame. So it has to be higher. So I may actually move her up a little bit. Let's actually take a look at that. So I am going to just grab all of those layers connected to her and her feet. Beautiful. And I'm just going to then bump those up. There we go. Here we go. So that it's not necessarily on top of that. And because it doesn't have to be like that, I can make it like that. There we go. I can move that down so that it's separated a little bit. Not bad. I like it. I like it. So continuing on with this, the next step is going to be to actually add in some flares to our title, which at this point in time, I always have flares just like resting here, and then I can adjust their colors. But I do have flare brushes that I use for this, which you can get in my shop. Yay, that. And I'm just going to see where that's going to fit. We are looking for specific places to be putting flares. Flares do not happen on the bottom of things. They do not happen on the very top of things. You are looking for where the light is already hitting, and you are adding it in. I do want to make this a little bit smaller, but I do like it on the T here. You can see it's off center a little bit because it's where the light is hitting. So we've got some of that flare in there. I may pull one of those. Don't do that. Yep, that would be the one. I am going to drag that down to the author name as well. So we have a little bit of flare down here somewhere. This is obviously going to change when the title and the author's name are selected for the person who buys this pre-made cover, which you can find, by the way, at coveraday.com. If you are interested in this cover, you can grab it right now while I'm on air through the end of the broadcast for only $100. Otherwise, it goes back to coveraday.com, and it's going to be like $300. So you got options over there. Go check those out. And now I'm going to be working on adding a dragon and be working on the lighting. So next step, dragon. Following step, lighting. And then we may play with some of the things that are already on here as well. I have an idea first, though. Because you know, sometimes inspiration will strike. So what I need to do is actually, this one can go here. The rest of these come down and go over my title. So right now I am just looking for that, which can then come down here. Those go right into the title, and I'm putting all of those in a folder called title. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this just in case I don't like what I'm about to do so that it's still there and ready to go. And I am actually going to drag this down so that it's kind of over her face. And then the next step is to drag this layer down beneath my model. So I'm actually just going to pop that right in here, and all of a sudden she is standing in front of it kind of like a magazine, and it didn't strike just the way that I thought it would. It was a good try. Sometimes it's really good to do something like that. In this particular case, I don't like how it works. So I'm going to put it back up top where it was. And then our next step is going to be to add in our dragon. So let me go ahead and grab my dragons. I'm just going to glance through these. I think I picked the dragon that, oh no. I'm like, I found the dragon. Oh wait, there's another one. Do I like that better? Do I like the other one better? I think okay, choice one or choice two. Choice one or choice two. Put your numbers in the comments below, and I'm gonna think about which one. Try to guess which one I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm gonna try choice one first. And the first thing I'm gonna do is to transform and flip it horizontally. I'm gonna make it a lot smaller, and I'm gonna bring it right over here. Ah. I don't think I like it the way that I thought I was going to like it. Where's that layer? Let me turn that off. Let me try choice number 2, and let's see how that goes. Again, we're going to edit down to transform over to, well, that was not the button I meant to hit. Let me Command Z that one. And I'm going to go to edit, down to transform, down to flip horizontal, not flip vertical like it tried to do. Now, this is a very big dragon currently. If you're getting Khaleesi vibes, do let me know. But we're going to make this a little bit smaller, and I do think that one looks a little bit better. I do like that a little bit better. Oh, and Amanda guessed right. Number 2 is the one that fit better. And Amanda, working magic, thank you. I appreciate that. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a brightness and contrast panel. I'm going to use my clipping mask to link it to that channel. And then the next thing I want to do is bump up the brightness. Nope, bump up the contrast and probably bump up the brightness, which we may have to tap off on the head because wow. I want to change the color. I don't like the color. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add a layer. I am going to create a clipping mask, and I am going to grab maybe some blue tones. And I'm just going to paint over that. And then I'm going to change my blend mode probably down to color. And then I'm going to reduce my opacity drastically. You can kind of see how it's already starting to like blend in a little bit better. I am tapping on the brightness and contrast panel, and I'm just going to tap it off of the head because it's too much. And I'm actually going to tap it off the orange part there. I could do this through a saturation panel, but I don't want to. And then I'm just going to actually go into that a little bit more, and I am going to, there we go. Just mess with that a little bit. I think want to add in one more brightness and contrast panel, and just there we go. So I wanted to make parts of it a little more contrasty because it was a little bit matte for me, but now it's too much in certain areas, like it's too dark. So I'm just putting that layer mask on there, and I'm just tapping it off of the wings. There we go. That's a bit better. You liked it when it was a giant right behind her. I know, right? But for now, I'm just going with the little things. If somebody actually wants to buy it and wants something bigger, they can add that in there. I may add in one more, actually. Might have 2 dragons. I'm not sure. Let's find out. We're going to see how this baby looks. I'm going to bring this over here. Oh, yeah. Yes, people. Yes. Somebody get in my comments and tell me what you think this story is about. I'm just saying. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a brightness and contrast panel. And I'm going to clipping mask that to there. I'm going to, of course, bump up my contrast, bump down my brightness. I am going to add in a blank layer, clipping mask that to it. Maybe I'll add in some red colors this time. Paint that right on in there. And change my blend mode down to, wow, color is bright. He was a little better on this one, I think. But it's still a little much. So I'm going to desaturate that a touch by lowering my opacity. We're down to like 46% on this one. That's pretty good. So now I need to do some lighting effects. I need to blend this in a little bit more. So I'm going to grab my flares and my cool things and like all the fun, fabulous, magical lighting effects. I am known in the photography world. If you didn't know, I'm a professional photographer. I'm known for my use of movement and my use of lighting. That's what the industry knows me for. And so I'm in here with my lights. I'm just like in my happy place. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get myself right below my model level. And I'm just going to start pulling in some colors just to see what looks good, what I like, what I don't like. Ooh, you guys, that looks really neat. I hadn't intended that, but like, ooh, I like that. I like it coming over the mountain. I like it over her dress. There's one thing I want to try. I'm going to turn this layer off for a second, and I just want to see if I move this to a different location, if that's going to be better. And it is. It is. Hang on, I'm going to add in the sun. The sun is coming up over the mountains. I have to, sometimes the mouse doesn't work, so you just have to kind of like adjust with the arrows, because I can speak English. Arrows right there. Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm putting a white layer mask over this. I'm grabbing my soft round brush and I'm jacking my opacity down really, really far. And I'm taking it off of her arm just a little bit because that's too intense on her arm. There we go. That's what we need. And I want to make sure I'm adding that other one back in. I'm going to remove everything but the flare over her dress because Lord knows I love that. So I'm adding the layer mask and I'm actually going to leave it in the top left corner. And I'm just going to remove that, like what would appear to be like a sun there. I'm going to put it up to 100% opacity and just tap that off. And we're going to start to get that in there. The people of the dragons have been, oh, we got the ideas. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm going to go back in and read these later, but I got to keep designing. So I am continuing to look for really good colors that I want to work with this. I do have one in particular that I do want to work with. I'm just looking for it in my files because y'all know I've got multiple files of flares. There it is. There it is. I found it. And I'm going to just bring this in. And I'm going to switch my blend mode to screen. By the way, which I didn't explain, anything that has a black background, if you switch the blend mode to screen, it removes the black. So you just have the fancy colors, which is beautiful and brilliant and wonderful and lovely. And we love doing things like this. Oh my goodness, with the pretty colors. Oh, y'all, that looks cool. That does look cool. Okay. I'm going to maybe reduce my opacity a little bit on this. No, I'm not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a layer mask over it, and then on a low opacity, I'm going to tap it off just a touch in certain places because I don't want it all gone because I do want that like bright pop right there. Pretty, pretty, pretty. But I didn't want it quite as intense. So I'm just kind of wrapping these flares around her. I'm going to put some lighting over the dragons, lighting in the sky. You know the drill. We're going to add in some of this stuff because right now our dragons are very like, woo! They're very noticeable. And we want to make sure we are kind of making them blend in a little bit. So this is a little bit bright, and we have to remove part of that yellow because that's a little bit intense. So I might need to just, oh yeah, okay, that kind of looks like it's blending in a little bit more, which I like. I might tap it off just a little bit, so I'm putting that layer mask on there. And just on a low opacity, I'm just tapping it off of the, make it a little smaller, and reduce my opacity. I'm just tapping it off of the dragon just a little bit so we can see some of the features, but we kind of want to blend it in there. So we also need to blend in the one in the back. There's two ways I can be doing this. I can use a lighting effect, but because it's over that darker section of the sky, I want it to look a little bit further back, a little bit on the foggy side. So I'm actually going to find the layer with my dragon. And when I do, I am going to Dragon 2. I'm actually going to just reduce the opacity entirely. And all of a sudden, you can see my dragon starts to blend in a little bit more as if he's coming out of the clouds. He's flying forward. Look how that blends in so nicely. And I'm just going to bring it up just a touch. There we go. I like it. I like it. Oh, I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying this. While I'm still working on this, please get into my comments. I'm going to save this real fast because I forget to do that a lot. While I'm working on this and adding in more lighting effects, I want to hear from you. What type of cover should we do next week? Should it be dystopia? Should it be another fantasy, paranormal romance? Should we do contemporary? Should we do a text-based cover? Let me know. Let me know what we should do, and then come back every week to vote on what we're creating the next week. And like I said, now as this is finishing saving, you do have the ability to buy this while I'm on air. So if you're an author or a publisher and you want this for a future upcoming book or one you got ready to go, you can actually grab this right now for only $100 while I'm still on air. The second I get off air, it goes into the normal cover a day site where it's going to be between, well, it would start at $250 for any of these covers and go up to several $100s. Sorry, I'm distracted by what I'm creating. And of course, you can do custom covers over there as well. So there's lots of fun options for you to check out. I kind of like separating her arm. Her arm is actually against her body in this image, but it kind of looks like the light is peeking through as if as she's walking, it's moved just enough that there's a little bit of a gap between her hip and her arm. And it kind of comes through here. Now you can very clearly see those lines. So I'm actually going to go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to calm it down a little bit because I don't want it to be quite so line driven here. And there we go. And this may be a little intense on the outsides. I kind of like it, but I may want to tap that down just a little bit with a black brush on like 21% opacity. I'm just taking it down just a tiny bit across her like stomach waistline there. So you can kind of see how that is coming through. It did tap off right on that yellow, which I need to bump back up. So I'm just drawing that back in. I just wanted to get part of that out of the way. Look how cool this is looking, y'all. That's pretty good. Dystopian covers, text-based covers. Dang, I did a really cool text-based cover, Freedom, a couple of weeks ago. Ooh, if I have a book for that, I am so keeping that. It was a good cover. Let's see. I may want to put a little bit of flare up front. And I did say I was going to add in some grass up front. So let me actually, before I do anything else, let me go ahead and add that grass back in up front. So I am just looking for the grass that I had created earlier. And all I'm doing for this is making it a little bit bigger. And I'm just pulling it in. You can kind of see how it's like in the front there. We're going to change the coloring in just a minute. But because this is in the foreground here, we actually do need to blur it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put this in a single folder. And then I am going to add in brightness and contrast and clipping mask that right to it. I'm going to bump up the contrast, bump down the brightness. Maybe. I'm going to add in a normal layer, and I'm going to grab that same brown color from before. I'm going to paint over it, change my blend mode. Oops, I am on a low opacity. I have to bump that back up. Painting over that, use my clipping mask to it. So now you can see where that brown is. I'm going to change my blend mode down to I'm going to change it to soft light because I do want to see some of the detail in that. And then I am just going to maybe even bump this up a little bit more. There we go. So then I'm going to duplicate that layer because just in case this doesn't work, I don't want it to be destructive. So I'm duplicating the folder. I am modifying that into a smart object, and then I'm going to go up to filter, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. Because it's in the foreground, it's not going to be in focus. You look at any photograph, things in focus are in focus, and anything on that plane is going to be in focus. Anything in the background, anything in the foreground is going to be out of focus. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to make that a little bit out of focus. And then it kind of adds a little bit of an element to there. I can even go in if I want and maybe bump up some of that brightness because it is a little bit in the foreground. So we can actually add in a touch there. There you go. You can kind of see how that works. Now, technically speaking, in an image like this, the mountains would be kind of blurred. So I'm actually going to come back here And a lot of book covers don't do this because while they're made by professional cover designers, they are not professional designers in the sense that they're creating a believable world with their imagery. So a lot of them don't do this, and it makes it look a little unrealistic. So we're actually going to go ahead and we're going to blur that. I tried to say blend it. No, we're going to blur it. So I'm going to hit Gaussian blur on a secondary layer. I duplicated that, and that is too much. So I'm going to back this off because we still want to see a lot of the detail, but not all the detail. So let me just turn this on and off real quick. You can see the difference between it being on and off. It's not significant, and that's okay. I am going to put a white layer mask on here. I'm going to hit Command-I to invert it because I don't want to lose my detail in the clouds. So then I'm just going to paint it back onto the mountains on 100% opacity. And you can kind of see, not all of it, but I am taking out some of that detail work, and I'm just tapping it in different areas so that I still have some detail in some places and not in others. So now all of a sudden it starts to blend that in a little bit more. You can definitely see the differences. I'm turning that on and off, and then we're good to go with that. So then I can just kind of play with my lighting a little bit. So now I could, and I think I'm going to try this. I think I'm going to go up right beneath my title. If I can find my title, there it is. I'm going to grab that same flare I used a minute ago, that like reddish color flare. I'm going to change my blend mode to screen. I'm going to come in and I'm going to put this back here because it kind of makes that pop just a little bit. Now I can change the positioning. There we go. And we see how that pops just a little bit. So let me turn that on and off. That just blends it in a little bit more, and I like that a lot. So then I'm just going to play, I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments. I'm going to play with the lighting a little bit more. You will hunt the stream down. Yeah, it was a good one. I'll try to send you the link to it later. Have you ever had to go full on court for someone stealing your book? Do you mean my book covers, or do you mean my manuscripts? Because people do that all the time. They just take manuscripts and they sell them, or they get them out for free, and it's extremely expensive and you can rarely stop them. So I get notifications a couple times a week about people doing that. It is not cool. But unfortunately, it is author life. You don't make a ton of money, and you also tend to lose money because people steal. Life's great. I may add in some other flary type things here, potentially. Add in a little bit of coloring. Oh, I kind of like that off to the side. I'm going to come up. I'm going to lower the opacity on the frame real quick because I do want to see that. There we go. And I'm just going to add in some different colorings to this, some purplies, some rainbowy thingies. Oh, that was kind of nice. I kind of liked that on the spine. I actually might keep that there. Just kind of like pulling things. And we don't want to go like too major on that. I'm going to get rid of some of that, but right now I'm just kind of Gaussian blurring the lines out of that. Because I do just want a little bit of coloring up. There we go, up toward the top. And I don't like all of it, so I'm just putting the layer mask and then inverting it. And then all I'm doing is grabbing my brush and just painting some of that back in, and I may lower the opacity on that as well because I don't want a ton of it. Okay, so my next step is going to be to grab my title, which is right here, and duplicate that layer. And then I am going to go into Edit, down to Transform, down to Rotate 90 degrees clockwise. This obviously is going to change placement-wise when somebody buys this and we put it on a spine. This is a huge spine. This is like hundreds and hundreds of pages worth of things. This is not a normal size novel by any means, so that will change a little bit. We are going to grab our author name, duplicate that, again, go into Edit, down to Transform, 90 degrees clockwise. And we're going to make that a little bit smaller. We're going to put that over here. This, again, will change with the publisher icons in there, the logos, all those fun, fabulous things. And I might want to do a little bit of work on the back cover as well. We're going to do a little bit more on the front, but for now, I'm going to grab a dragon, and I am going to pop that into the back cover so that we've got some dragony goodness over here as well. This actually could potentially be the space where we want the larger dragon. Look at that. Haha, filling up the space. That is a dragon in need of coloring help. So let me go ahead and add in my brightness and contrast panel. We're going to contrast that up. We're going to brightness that down. We are going to grab a hue and saturation panel. Again, color clipping mask that. We're going to drag down the saturation because we do not want those like obnoxious-y colors there. I may go back into my brightness and contrast panel and bump up the brightness just to, oh, there we go, that's better. And then I'm just going to add some coloring to that. Maybe we'll go with kind of like a greeny color for that. And we're just going to use the clipping mask to adjust that specifically to, thank you, there we go, to that. And then I'm going to come down to probably hue and back that opacity down quite a bit, so that we've got some colories going on there. I kind of like it. I do kind of like this. Okay. Okay, so I would want to do some lighting on the back. Give me just a second. We're going to do some lighting on the back here. I'm just looking for some colories that I need. Wow, I'm using fun words today. I've been hanging out, I think. Whoa. I just like what happened there. That looks really nice. I'm going to put it on the back. I had to decide. I had to make the choice, and we made the executive decision to continue on with this like this. Boom. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I want to rotate this just a little bit because I really like that, but I don't want it. There we go. And I might just blur that just a tiny bit. I don't want to blur it a lot. But I just want to take that like hexagonal shape out just a little bit. There we go. So my next step for this, I'm actually going to go and grab my debris brush, which I have to add in because I didn't have that up in my Photoshop. I'm going to grab my debris brush, and I am going to add in a new layer. It's doing the spinny wait for me thing. There we go. We're going to go ahead and we are going to do that and grab the debris brush. This is also something available in my shop. Best thing ever. And we're just going to grab the light debris brush. This can also be used for snow. But I'm going to grab like a light browny tan-like color. If I can find one that I like. I might have to go to the... Whoa, hey, hello. A lot of colors there going on. They have changed... Oh, there we go. That's what I want. They've changed how some of Photoshop works over the years. And, oh, my puppy's dreaming. Jada! Hi, baby. Sorry if you heard that. That was my puppy. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a new layer. And I'm just going to add in some little dust-like elements in front of her. So you can see it's kind of going over her dress a little bit. Kind of some stuff in the sky here. Gonna put some up here, over here. You can do it kind of like for some sun flare if you want. For debris, you can put it on as snow. You could actually use it on white as stars, which looks really cool. And then, of course, you can make the up close debris. So you can kind of see how that got a little bit bigger here. And with that, I'm just going to lower the opacity. We don't want it super bright, but we do want to add in that texture. And I don't love how it looks up at the top as much. So on that particular layer, I am just going in and I am putting the layer mask over it. And then I am going to, on reduced opacity, soft white or soft black brush, I'm just taking some of that back so that it is not quite as harsh. My next step for this is going to be to ground it a little bit. So I'm actually going to go up toward the top. And I am going to just add in a layer. I'm going to grab my gradient tool, this time on linear and on black. And then on the bottom, I'm just adding in a layer of black just to ground it a little bit. There we go. I'm going to add in another layer because I just want to ground it just a touch. I'm going to do that up on top, but that's going to be very severely lightened. I'm going to switch over to the radial tool, and just in a couple of places, I'm going to ground it a little bit more by adding in some darkness along the sides. near the mountain, near the fog. It is not a vignette, because a vignette is just like that horrid black vignette around the outside. But by doing it in certain locations, it does ground it a little bit and kind of blends it all together. My next step on this one is definitely to come up to the very, very, very top. I'm going to go into a brightness and contrast panel without clipping it to anything. And I'm going to bump up severely my contrast. And I can bump up my brightness just a little bit because that blends it all in together. And it's a little bit intense for me right now. So I actually want to come in and I want to grab a curves panel. I'm going to go into my blue channel and I am going to swerve it to the blue side. This is going to be a lot. It's not going to be that much, but I just wanted you to see how that worked. I'm just going to add in some blue tones so it's not quite so orangey based. And then I'm actually going to back the opacity on that down just a little bit. So you can kind of see how that is pulling together. I'm going to take my frame off for a second because I just want to get a look at it as it is. There we go. Okay. So then I think what I would do, I'm actually going to grab my selection tool. That was not at all what I wanted to do. I'm just going to kind of, along this particular edge, just kind of bump down the contrast a little bit, or the brightness, and bump up the contrast a little bit. And then on my round brush, 100% opacity, I'm just tapping down in certain areas just to kind of ground it a little bit. Just filling that in there. I didn't like that last two. There we go. There we go. And then the only thing I do want to do is kind of come in here and add a little bit of brightness above that title. So watch me make that a little bit lighter. And I'm just going to tap that on, but not everywhere. I do want to take it off a little bit, but that way we've got that pop of color. Okay, I am going to go ahead and I am going to call it. Do I listen to music while I'm writing? I typically do not, because I end up singing and typing the lyrics. Occasionally I'll put on instrumentals, but usually it distracts me more than anything. Suggestion. Wait, do you suggest any of your books to a major fan of Lions and Lamps? All of them? You read all the books? I don't know. I mean, what to read next? I would probably go with one of my other retellings. Golden might be a good place. My Jack Frost series might be a good place. Sugar Coated is kind of vicious. Might be a good place. But yeah, tons of options for you to start there. I am going to go ahead and call this. If you want it, this is your very last chance to grab this particular cover for only $100, and do all the fun, fabulous things there as well. We will be putting this back into coveradate.com. You can head on over there to check out literally hundreds of covers, both from the YA, sci-fi, fantasy space, and adult romance as well. And we do custom covers and all the fun things. Next week, we will be creating a new cover. You guys get to vote. So make sure you're paying attention to my Instagram stories. Next week, every week we go live at this time. So hit the subscribe and notification bell if you have not already so that you don't miss the live streams. I got some major things coming over the next couple of weeks here on my YouTube. So you don't want to miss those videos anyway. But you can vote and suggest what we'll do next week, what type of model we'll use, what type of cover we'll create, the genres, the wonderful things. This will be over in coveradate.com in just a couple of minutes for you to get your hands on. Until then, I hope you all have a great day and stay inspired. Thanks so much for joining me today.